Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler back at the University of Virginia with our first wild card reaction show of the NFL playoffs. The Texans 32-12 win over the Chargers. Excuse me if my voice is a little hoarse here. You know, I was in Miami this past weekend cheering on our Fighting Irish as they took down Penn State. So a little bit of yelling, a little too much yelling. I should have known better with the playoffs
not
coming.
Not too much.
But
not
it was
too
great.
Much.
Oh my
Maybe
God,
not enough. I'm surprised. If you can talk today, I think you didn't do enough.
I actually started to hold back in the fourth quarter because my voice, it was starting to hurt. I was like, oh my God, my lungs are on fire here. And I had to save my voice a little bit for this show here. So 32-12, you know, the Chargers came into this game favored. They were 2.5-point favorites right before kickoff. A lot of people, including this show, had talked about the struggles that Houston's had throughout the season and whether you could really take them as a true contender. And I'm not sure if that changes after today. But it was a convincing win. And so, Ziggy, I'll kick it to you first before getting into my thoughts here. What did this win tell you about the Texans? Is there reason to believe here? Houston wasn't even sold out. The stadium wasn't even sold out, apparently. Like, is there a reason that these Texans fans should start to believe in this team?
I think the good game to compare this to is the wild card win against the Browns last year, right? Texans dominate the Browns, have an incredible defense performance, go to Baltimore, and then get crushed. I really think this year is different. I think there's a few reasons to think that. One is I think this year's Kansas City team, the team they'll likely be playing, is a little bit more vulnerable than that Baltimore team. But more importantly, this win was legit from the Texans. When we previewed this game, I said that Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter were one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL that was getting basically no attention. They sure showed up this game. 3 interceptions. Nico Collins had an incredible game. Joe Mixon looked back. And again, I think unlike that Browns team last year, this Chargers team was legit, right? They won 11 games in the regular season. They had an excellent quarterback, right? This wasn't Joe Flacco from last year going on a miracle run. This was a legit Chargers team. And I liked how the Texans played. They dominated after a pretty slow start. Yeah, I think there is reason to be optimistic for them going to Kansas City or wherever they have to go next week.
I mean, when you have a defensive performance like they had today, it's hard not to get excited if you're a Texan fan. I mean, they were, if you're watching, especially as that game went on, you know, Justin Herbert, what'd they say? How many interceptions did he have on the season? He had 4?
Oh, on the season.
No, the game he had 4, but in the season, I thought it was under 10.
He had 3 on the season.
Yeah. Yeah. To have 4 interceptions today. A couple of those, one specifically wasn't exactly Herbert's fault, deflected off tight end's hands, but still, I mean, they were in his face all day. Really, the one touchdown for the Chargers came, or the second touchdown for the Chargers came on that kind of fluky Lad McConkey. It was an amazing play from McConkey. I don't want to take anything away, but the Texans were just all over the place. They're swarming. Isn't that's their motto, right? Swarm. So you were talking about last year's game with the Browns, Ziggy, and why to be more optimistic this season. I think I'm still a little reserved on Houston. I don't want Texans fans to be mad. Like, I think that this was a great performance today, and I think that this team, once you're in the divisional round, you never know what's going to happen. And when you have a defense that's playing the way they have, really most of the season, you got to hope that you can go in and shut down. It's hard to say, but try and slow down Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, whoever it may be on a potential Super Bowl run. The concern that I have is actually on the offensive side of the ball with the Texans. Last year, they felt more explosive, and they probably were a little bit more. Although when you come to think of it, they didn't have Tank Dell last year in the playoffs either. So Nico Collins just feels like he's carrying so much weight on this offense that if they do get into some sort of a shootout with one of the elite AFC teams, I'm not so sure I believe that they can keep up as those games go on. But look, they're going to have to hope they don't get into those situations. And when your defense plays like this, there's every reason to believe that they can go in and at least compete with these top dogs. I'm still not there personally. I think there's very clearly a gap from them to the next level of AFC teams, but a 32-12 win is a good start.
I don't know if I buy that, Paul. I mean, Nico Collins, he's one of the best receivers in the NFL, full stop. It's no longer best young receiver. It's not ascending star. He's one of the best. And look, you compare Josh Mechie, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins to what the Chiefs will have next week. Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown. I'm probably taking that Texans wide receiver room. Like, I think in a lot of ways, if you compare some of the other teams the Texans might have had to go against, like the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, like the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, I'm assuming that the Ravens and Bills are going to win. I think that's a relatively safe assumption.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Those the NFL playoffs. You never know. But the Texans just a couple of weeks ago were able to go into Kansas City and give them a game. We know that it's a formula for winning the Super Bowl to combine an elite offense with an an elite defense with an above average offense. I don't know. I still believe in CJ Stroud. I think he had a decent season. He was the victim of a little bit of overhype from the media, from people, frankly, like us, saying that he was going to be the next big thing. He had a tough year, but he played well today. He and Nico Collins have a special connection. And this Chargers defense, let's not forget, was one of the best in the NFL. And he had a good game today.
Well, that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? Is how much do you believe in CJ Stroud? Because look at the comparisons that we're making right here. I think a lot of us would say the Chargers and Texans are probably in the same contenders tier in the AFC, in that second tier, despite having elite quarterbacks. But is Justin Herbert or CJ Stroud on that same level as Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen? And as you could be a huge fan of Stroud or Justin Herbert. I don't think they're on that same tier level. And that's the difference, because, yeah, you're right. If you go and look at all the wide receiver units in the AFC right now, look at the Bills, look at the Ravens, look at the Chiefs. Like, they're not blowing you away. I don't think they're as good as the Vikings group. You know, it's
the exact opposite of the NFC.
It is. It's exactly. I don't think they're as good as the Eagles group, you know? So I think the difference comes down to, as great as CJ Stroud has been through 2 seasons, you know, it's really impressive. He most what was it? Only a handful of quarterbacks ever have been to the divisional round in their first 2 seasons. I don't think he's on that level, and he has the chance to prove it. Like, this is another great opportunity for CJ Stroud to insert himself into that conversation of the league's very, very best quarterbacks. He's already one of the best, but to enter yourself into that upper echelon, that, you know, it's rarefied. And he has the opportunity next week. I don't think he's there yet, and that's the difference in these teams to me. But again, if your defense can come out and have an all-world performance, then yes, this Texans offense is good enough where they can win a game.
Well, Paul, I see you over here doubting. I think this Texas team is a chip on their shoulder right now.
They should.
And we saw what that got them against the Chargers, right? They were home dogs, as he said. The stadium wasn't even sold out. And what did they do? They made Justin Herbert the golden boy quarterback of the NFL. Those are 14 for 32, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. You hear about this Chargers run game. They dominate the trenches. They finally got J.K. Dobbins back. Nothing. Right, J.K. Dobbins averages 2.9 yards a carry. Gus Edwards doesn't do any better. Ladd McConkey, he gets a day, right? He gets 200 yards, incredible performance. No one else goes for over 15. Actually, I think Will Disley might have had 16 yards. Whatever, doesn't matter. You got a complete team performance from the Texans today. CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, an incredible defense. I love them with a chip on their shoulder going into Kansas City. I don't know. I'm starting to see the vision for this team making it farther into the playoffs.
Wow.
I'm not going to say they're winning a Super Bowl or whatever. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC or anything like that. But the question for me, when we're thinking about what's going to happen with this team next week, is, was this win different than last year? I think the answer is absolutely. I think they beat a better team. They looked better doing it. And you know, after the wounds from last year, this team is going to be taking over. They play very seriously. Tomorrow, I'm sure they're going to get back to practice or looking at film or getting ready to play. I don't know. I might be a believer after this game. This was a huge win from the Texans.
Well, they kind of talked about one of the big drives of the half was the Houston touchdown drive at the of the game. I'm sorry, it was the Houston touchdown drive at the end of the first half, where CJ Stroud had that unbelievable 3rd down scramble, and I believe he hit Nico Collins for a big gain. And that kind of finally sparked some things for Houston. But I still felt like most of the game they were kind of inconsistent on offense. That the defense set them up a few times. The defense had a touchdown, for crying out loud. So that's it for me, Ziggy's. I thought last year the offense felt more formidable than it has for much of this season. And I do think, maybe regress is not the right word, but I think CJ Stroud hasn't been as captivating, I would say, as last season, where it felt like he was just, a little bit more of a threat, and that Texans offense was a little more threatening. So this year, to me, it feels like the defense is going to carry them more than the offense would. And that's where I have my concerns when you're going against the league's best quarterbacks. But yeah, look, I
It's the playoffs.
I think
right?
that the
nice
inconsistencies are the problem for me with Houston, but I'm very happy for them. I just don't believe.
Yeah. No, well, the thing is, in the playoffs, you don't need consistency. You need 4 games. That's it.
You need moments.
We have seen it from CJ Stroud before. He can play, if not quite at the level of Patrick Mahomes or Lamar at Jackson or Josh Allen at their best, close enough that he can keep up. And if the Texans defense plays like today, all of those offenses, we've seen performances from them where they've been dominated by opposing defenses. The Chiefs in particular have really had struggles this year on offense. They have not looked like the Chiefs of yesteryear. You've got them taking 3 weeks off to go before they play the Texans. If the Texans get off to a hot start in Kansas City, again, I'm not saying for sure it's going to happen, but I see the vision, and I did not see the vision before this game.
Yeah, and if I'm going to now transfer over from kind of negative side to positive, because look, you can't just come on and be negative after
it's a 32. Dominant win in the playoffs.
Yeah, after a 32-12 win. Like, I'm looking at the team stats, they outgained the Chargers 429 to 261. You know, they intercepted one of the best quarterbacks in the league 4 times. Like, there were so many things to be happy about as a Texan fan, and I'm not trying to put water on the fire here for Houston fans, but I do think that when you had Derek Stingley today was unbelievable. Like, he's all pro, I believe.
He's been that good all year.
Yeah, he is all pro. You know, Danielle Hunter, as a Viking fan, we kind of did this swap with the Texans this year, getting Grenard. They got Hunter. It's worked out pretty well both ways. Both guys have been unbelievable. You know, Will Anderson, you're watching the Texans defense, and there's just stars all over the field. So, and DeMeco Ryans, has been one of the best in the game since he's taken over as head coach. So, I had a lot of fun just watching this defense attacked. Autry had a couple huge plays. Like, I do think that the Texans are capable of going on the road and beating one of these better teams in the league. It's just going to take kind of, I'm as a Notre Dame fan, I'm feeling like it's going to take a special effort to beat Ohio State in the national championship. It's going to take a special effort for the Texans to upset one of these teams on the road. But a day like today, look, momentum. I'm a big believer in momentum. And in the NFL, you never know what's going to happen on any given Sunday or Saturday afternoon. So I'm not there yet, but I do think that if CJ Stroud gets a little hot, this defense is good enough, and Nico Collins is good enough, and Joe Mixon is good enough that, yeah, I understand where you're coming from when you say you can see the path.
Yeah, well, we'll see next week, right? The Texans have a huge challenge ahead of them, as you said. But after this win, I don't think they're intimidated by anybody.
For the Chargers as well, great season. It's a horrible way to go out. A lot of people didn't see this coming, especially in this fashion. But for where they were at the start of the year with Jim Harbaugh taking over, the expectations were not to go to the playoffs, let alone be an 11-win team. I think that for LA, they're in a terrific position to hopefully the goal is not just getting the wild card though. The goal is to supersede the Chiefs and take over that division again. And I think they're on the right track with Jim Harbaugh there. A lot of really young pieces that they're going to be able to work with. Lad McConkey looks like he might be a star at receiver. Get another weapon for Justin Herbert, and they're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, well, we saw the Chargers going into this season. They were doing a balancing act. They had a lot of aging players. They were trying to decide who to keep, who not to keep. And I'll just say, after seeing what Keenan Allen did in Chicago this year, seems like they probably made the right choice there. But they're going into next year. They've got their first-round pick. They've got $75 million in cap space. They can generate more if they need. The win total for them this year was 8.5 wins. They hit 11. Like you said, that's pretty good for a transitional year. But the expectation in the building, I think now, after this game, is Super Bowl. And I know that feels weird to say after you just got absolutely obliterated in the wild card round. But when you've got Justin Herbert, I don't care if he had a bad game. He's a good quarterback. You've got one of the better defenses in the NFL. This team, the time is now. I think they're going to go into this offseason. They're going to be aggressive. I think Harbaugh wants to win because how much longer can you wait? Really? Like, guys are starting to get older, even on this defense. You only have so much time.
The defense will need some new faces coming in. But I think the next year, if you got to an AFC Championship game next year for the Chargers, I view that as a huge win.
Yeah, sure. But it's their internal goal. I think their goal this year was recover, make the playoffs. Next year, it's Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel.
I know. For every team, theoretically, the goal is the Super Bowl every year.
I think that's a little ahead of schedule. Super Bowl in year 2 is a little ahead of. It's actually of course, it's ahead of schedule. But I think from a non-Chargers fan, non-Charger player point of view, I think that them getting to just win the division first before we talk about Super Bowl. How about they win a division, Ziggy?
In some ways, I wonder if winning a Super Bowl is easier than winning that division.
That actually might be true. It's kind of crazy. But all right.
The Chiefs own it. But so enough about the Chargers. Their season's over. Today's the Texans' day.
Yeah. So we got 32-12 as the final score here. Yeah, two great postseason debuts in the playoffs for CJ Stroud last year and this season, and the Texans. They just throttled Cleveland. They throttled the Chargers this year, and then they're hoping for a different ending than last year when they went into Baltimore. And remember, they went to Baltimore, and in that game, you saw Lamar Jackson going into halftime pissed off. He was upset with the way the Ravens were playing. It was a game, and Baltimore came out, and in the second half, they showed that separation. So let's see what we see in year 2 now. On the road, you're going to get the best punch from these guys. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You said it might be the Chiefs in round 2. It could be, but you're going to get these top tier quarterbacks now. Show that you belong on that stage. This is an unbelievable opportunity for CJ Stroud and the Texans as a whole to take that next step, especially in the year, Ziggy, where we expected them to take the next step, but they really didn't do it. Kind of the way the Packers, we viewed the Packers. We expected them to be a little bit better than they were this season. Would be kind of amazing if after all the turmoil of the year and all the doubters, if Houston found a way to get away and go to the AFC Championship game and do exactly what people wanted them to do, just taking the uglier path. That could be a launching pad, the exact launching pad that they need to really turn this into a machine.
Well, yeah, it's funny when you talk about this, right? Like just how much these couple of games can matter.
Yeah.
Because you say, for them, whether or not they achieve their season goal or whether they get respect, they just have to win one game. And everybody's saying, oh, regular season doesn't matter. They were taking it easy. They were just figuring things out. They've made the AFC Championship game. Beating the best one time is all that you need to get respect around the NFL. But similarly, if you can have as great a regular season as you want, you can win as many games in the regular season as you want. If you don't win these playoff games, like this is when legends are made. This is when champions come about. Obviously, this is when the championship's played. But it's time for CJ Stroud. He can develop a reputation as the guy that shows up in the playoffs. It just takes one game.
Yeah, and to me, it's a lot about belief too. You can't go into these games thinking you're going to lose. If you show up,
they sure didn't for this one.
Oh, and that's exactly what I mean. Like you have a win like this, it makes the locker room believe. Because the Chargers, it's going back to your point earlier. The Chargers weren't. The Browns had a great run at the end of last season, and a few people picked the Browns to beat the Texans. But this Charger team has one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best coaches in the league, one of the best defenses in the league. To throttle them the way you did, it's hard not to look at yourself if you're a Texan and say, hey, we can do this. They need to get to that level of we can go and beat these top tier teams. And I'm not sure that they're there right now. There's a reason the stadium was empty. We were saying before, not empty. I'm sorry, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't empty, but it was not. It's rare for a home playoff game against a winnable opponent to not be sold out.
You need to have belief in yourself, and a win like this can do a lot. And dude, if they go and beat the Chiefs next week or whoever it is, then it's like all systems go. Who knows what's going to happen? Like this, I don't think this team really came close to scratching the surface of their ceiling this year. And if they wind up peaking at the right time, still a lot needs to go right. It's just one game, but it's exciting if you're a Texan fan. So happy for you guys. After a weird, it's hard to say like a rough season when you win your division, but it was kind of a weird year for Texans fans. And to have a playoff game like this, a playoff debut, man. On to the divisional round. See what's next. So, all right, we'll wrap it up there. 32-12, the Texans beat down Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. They move on to the divisional round. We'll see who they face. Steelers and Ravens is about to start right now, so let's go watch it. And we'll be back either later tonight or probably, in all likelihood, tomorrow for 3 games. And, of course, we'll be on for Packers-Eagles. Probably doing a live beforehand and a reaction afterwards. So, see you soon.